This 4th of July, we're remembering freedom, not only the freedom to live in privacy and dignity, far from spying, far from stop and frisk, but we're considering the tradition of giving sanctuary and safe haven for those fleeing oppression. Are there fewer refugees being resettled? What are the trends in refugee assistance, and what are the obstacles to resettlement? Our guest is Mitzi Schroeder, Director for Policy at Jesuit Refugee Service, USA, who has been working since 1979 to defend the rights of refugees and migrants throughout the world. She's also served as Deputy Chair of Refugee Council USA and is a member of the Executive Committee of Interaction, the U.S. Council for Voluntary International Action, and has a lot of experience as well with the U.S. Catholic Conference and elsewhere. So welcome to the show, Mitzi.
Thank you, Adam. I'm glad to be on.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering if you could say something, well, first of all, how you came into this work.
Certainly. I was working in 1979 on a PhD, and it was going slowly, and I was very struck by the Vietnamese boat people crisis, and I suddenly saw all of these people dying at sea and Cambodians being pushed back across borders into minefields, and I said, you know, there are people dying before my eyes. Why should I be working on a report that only 2 or 3 people will ever read? And I picked up the phone and began calling agencies working with refugees, and I got a 3-month job, and when the 3 months were over, I just kept coming to work, and now somehow it's been 34 years.
Well, time flies.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure you've been busy too, and you know, within those over 30 years, there have been various crises, different high tides and low tides in the refugee flow. I was wondering how you see it. What has it been like over that period?
Well, speaking in terms of the resettlement of refugees, first of all, which I think was the theme you started with, you know, we've seen a lot of changes in that time. When I first began working in this business, and for many years thereafter, that was during the Cold War, and our refugee resettlement program was really, the thrust of it was to save people from communism. So we were offering refuge to people who had fled from Eastern Europe, fled from the Soviet Union, after the U.S. withdrew from Vietnam, and we did have the boat crisis where people were fleeing from Vietnam and Cambodia. The U.S. felt a special responsibility, as well it should have, for that population.
Your video is not available. Okay.
Indo-Chinese. So in the early days, the populations were from Eastern Europe, from Russia, from Indochina, and basically and from Cuba. Almost all of the refugees were from a few communist countries. After the Cold War, the program became, in a sense, less political. It became more based on humanitarian need as such, and it became more diversified to meet the needs of a wider number of refugees. So that today, while we're not resettling as many refugees as we were in those early days, when the program was really massive, we're resettling refugees from a much wider variety of countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think perhaps the sense that this is all very political may go back several decades, and so people may still perceive it that way. But in terms of why the numbers are less, why is that? Because we hear that there are so many displaced millions around the world.
Well, I think that, I don't want to defend that policy. First of all, my organization, like a lot of organizations working with refugees, would like to see many more people resettled. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, even under the best of circumstances, probably only 1% of the world's refugees will ever be offered resettlement. It's expensive. It's time-consuming. Not all refugees want to be resettled. The vast majority want to be able to return home in safety and dignity. And some accept resettlement only very reluctantly. For example, the refugees from Bhutan that the U.S. has been resettling for the last few years, until a few years ago, they were not willing to be resettled, and their host country, Nepal, also was not willing to have them be resettled. It was only after about 16 years in exile that they began to realize that they never would be able to return to Bhutan, that the government there was adamant against taking them back. And so they have agreed to come to the United States and other resettlement countries, and now over 60,000 have come to the U.S. in the last few years. And let me say that is purely a humanitarian program. The U.S. really has no political reason to resettle those refugees except for their dire need.
When I see a lot of people in Queens who seem to be from Nepal, I don't know if they are Bhutanese, actually. I've never asked them. But there seem to be a lot of people from Nepal as well. So as you see different trends of people coming in, whether it's TPS, whether it's asylum or refugees, which are the groups that you see in the last 5 years coming to the United States?
Well, the largest groups in the last few years have been Burmese. Burmese refugees. Quite a few of those have come in the tens of thousands. Bhutanese, Iraqi refugees, and of course that's as a result of the U.S. Involvement in Iraq. Somali refugees, because Somalia is a failed state, and there have been vast numbers of refugees coming out of Somalia. We continue receiving Cubans. That is a vestige of the Cold War. Eritreans, Iranians, those are the people with the largest numbers over the last few years. Now, a new program is just getting started that we're very excited about that is going to be offering resettlement over the next, say, 5 to 10 years, about 50,000 Congolese. And they won't all come to the United States. That's the full number that will be resettled. But we do think quite a few will come here. And my organization, Jesuit Refugee Service, works in the Democratic Republic of Congo and works in the countries around the Congo. And we see the tremendous suffering and deprivation that those people have had. So we're very glad to see that at least some people will have this opportunity.
Well, I have a question about criteria, but first I just wondered about Syrians, since so many are being dislocated right now as well. I don't believe there's any large number that have come to U.S. yet, though they may be relatives to take care of them. What have you heard about that?
There have not been a large number that have come yet. I think that we will see an increase in the number of Syrians probably in the next year or two. I think that at this point most of the thrust of the effort has been just to receive, house, feed, and take care of those refugees who are coming out. And there are a very large number of Syrian refugees now. 1.7 million have left the country, and there's over 4.25 million who are internally displaced as well. And JRS is working all over the region with those refugees. We're providing education programs, which is one of our areas of specialty. Counseling inside of Syria, we're providing food and non-food items and education and psychosocial programming for about 100,000 people right now, and we're increasing the numbers we're serving by 5,000 a month, and that's an indication of unfortunately, the tremendous growth of need within the country.
How do you get access to the country? Are you in both government-controlled and less government-controlled areas?
Yes, we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are. And our regional director is a Syrian Jesuit priest.
Mm.
We have our staff are approximately half Syrian Christians and half Syrian Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a few, but very few expatriates working in the country, providing technical assistance and administration.
Mm.
But basically, we have access because most of our staff are Syrians.
Mm. And I hope the diversity of that staff can be maintained and help with whatever comes next.
Well, that's a concern. I mean, if this huge cloud has a very, very tiny silver lining, it may be that we're seeing different Christian groups and different Muslim groups who don't normally work together are working together because they're facing a common enemy, which is death and destruction.
Mm. Well, you mentioned the Bhutanese, and I also wanted to ask you about the Rohingya. Since right now there's a large number displaced and they're facing ethnic cleansing in Burma. I also understand there isn't a large number yet in the United States. I don't actually know the numbers of refugees outside of Burma. Is JRS working on that issue?
We're working with some Rohingya in Thailand. We are not working in Bangladesh, although we certainly advocate on that issue, and that is my area of expertise. The Rohingya are a minority. Burma is a country of many minorities, and this particular one is a people who are similar to the Bengali people who live in Bangladesh. And many years ago, in 1982, actually, Burma stripped the Rohingya of their citizenship and made them stateless people, and began a program of persecution, which continues to this day. And so, as a result, many Rohingya went into exile, initially into Bangladesh, but they've also gone into Malaysia and into the Middle East and into many, in smaller numbers, into many countries in the region. And it's one of the most terrible situations of refugee situations on earth. The Bangladeshi government, it's a very poor country. It's slowly sinking into the sea. It has little land or resources to share, and it remains adamant that these people cannot integrate into their society and must return home. Burma remains just as adamant that they're not their citizens and they shouldn't be allowed back. And then those Rohingya who have remained in Burma are under constant pressure and have been again displaced by the violence over the last year. So we don't really know what the solution to this is. There is a program of resettlement for the Rohingya, and small numbers come to the U.S. every year and go to other countries, but it isn't a very large program. I don't want to talk about this too much because I know there are delicate negotiations going on between the governments concerned at this point. I think it's safe to say the U.S. would like to see more Rohingya resettled. They also would like to see other solutions, found for the bulk of the population, because it is quite a large group, at least 250,000 people in Bangladesh right now.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that a lot of refugees, in fact, would like repatriation, going back home, and of course that makes a lot of sense. But if someone comes here, everything else has failed. They were lucky. They got admission to the United States. What kind of benefits do refugees receive that probably other immigrants aren't able to obtain?
Well, they get there first of all is an initial package of services they get during the first 3 months. That's paid for by the Department of State with also private funding. It's a public-private partnership, and it really is a wonderful model as to how resources from different, the government and the private sector can be put together to do good for people. Basically, they're received, an apartment is provided for them, necessary clothing, food, and so on is provided. A sponsoring organization helps them enroll their children in school, get any paperwork they need done, make sure that they have medical care, and basically, sees to it that they're oriented to the community, helps them get language training if they need that sort of help, and most importantly, helps them find jobs. So that's an initial placement. After that, another organization, the Office of Refugee Resettlement of the Department of Health and Human Services provides a longer grant for a few extra months of services. But compared to other countries who take far fewer resettled refugees, the U.S. program is very Spartan in some senses. It does not provide long-term assistance. Refugees are expected to find work and to become established in a reasonable amount of time. Mm-hmm. So it is sort of I won't call it sink or swim. It's not that dire, but it is sort of a total immersion a program where people have to make a real effort to get established quickly.
Well, yeah, I'm not surprised, but yes, it sounds like the partnership is crucial in getting the initial resettlement going. And is there a way that people can assist refugees later on? I mean, in the different faith-based groups like your own.
Yes, certainly, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I always forget the number, I think it's 9 resettlement agencies that sponsor refugees. Some of them are faith-based and some of them are secular. Mm-hmm. Migration and Refugee Services of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is the largest organization, and they work through Catholic dioceses and parishes around the country. Other faith-based organizations, the Lutherans, the Episcopalians, and so on, also work through their local parishes to provide hospitality and services to refugees. Mm-hmm. And then the secular organizations, which include International Rescue Committee and several others, also work through local institutes or local offices, so they all welcome volunteers.
Well, this sounds great. And if people are tired of writing their doctoral theses or their they can do what you did and throw it up in the air and connect with a life of service. And I really want to thank you very much for what you're doing. And I understand the new Pope Francis is also a Jesuit.
He is. Yes.
So I hope that spirit of service will continue to flow out and effectively make the world a better place. So I guess are there any contact information that listeners should have about your programs?
Yes, if they'd like to learn more about Jesuit Refugee Service, they can visit our website at www.jrsusa.org. Mm-hmm. We'd be very happy to, if they did that. There's a lot of information there about our programs and about the refugee program in general. Or they could also visit the website of Refugee Council USA, also a great source of information.
Great. Well, thanks, Mitzi.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, Mitzi Schroeder, Director of Policy, Jesuit Refugee Services USA. We're going to take a quick station break, and we'll be right with you after this.
You are tuned to WBAI in New York and WBAI.org. You are listening to the War on Immigrants Report. Please stay tuned.
Again, no
This is music from the Rohingya people of Burma, and as we try to find our next guest, who will be, I hope, Sheikh Ubaid, who is on the board of the Burma Muslim Task Force and also well known for his work with the Muslim Peace Coalition. But we're going to continue playing this music for a little bit and see if we can get Sheikh Ubaid.
আমার দেশের পানি তারা ভরাইয়ানি আমার দেশের পানি তারা ভরাইয়ানি পাইতাম মধুর রসে রে আগে নবুদিলাম দেশকে সারিলাম দেশে মরিলাম দুঃখে দুঃখে রে
And this is